Oh, my wife's liking my house. Smartwatches, they seem like a good idea, but then you just have too much information all the time. What's happening, everybody? It's Scott here from WFLBC, and we're gonna try something a little different on this video. I've never done anything like this on this channel before. I want to talk a little camera news. There's been so many camera launches in the last couple of weeks from Nikon, Canon, Fujifilm. So the first announcement was the Nikon Z6 and Z7 full-frame mirrorless cameras, a first from Nikon. The announcement that followed closely behind that was the Canon EOS R full-frame mirrorless camera, another first from Canon. And then following right behind those two yesterday was Fujifilm's announcement of the X-T3, which is an APS-C mirrorless camera. Let's just compare these three. Right off the bat, the Nikon and the Canon are both full-frame sensors, where the Fuji X-T3 is APS-C, so it's a 1.5 times crop sensor. The megapixel count for the Nikons, the Z6, which is the lower end, is 24.5 megapixels with an AA filter. The Z7 is 45.7 megapixels with no AA filter. The EOS R is 30.3 megapixels with an AA filter, and it's an existing sensor, so it's not a new sensor. The Nikon, new sensor. The Fuji, new sensor. The EOS R is an existing sensor. I think it's out of the 5D Mark IV. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. But it's an existing sensor. The X-T3 sensor, 26.1 megapixels, no AA filter, X-Trans 4 sensor. So it's Fujifilm's patented X-Trans color array. Just a slight bump in resolution and no AA filter, which they've been doing for a few generations now. Autofocus. The Canon EOS R, and maybe I found this is a misprint, but it says there's 5,655 autofocus points. What? That can't be right. It's got to be 565. Either way, it's a lot. Coverage is 88% with 100% height, so not quite 100%. The Nikon has, the Z6 has 273 focus points. The Z7 has 493. 90% coverage on the frame, so pretty similar to the Canon. The X-T3 has 425 points with 100% coverage, so the entire frame is covered, but it is a smaller sensor, so maybe it's easier to cover. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. The only camera with stabilization are the Nikons, and they have 5-axis electronic stabilization. The Canon and the Fuji, no stabilization. Burst rates, the Z6, 12 frames per second, the Z7, 9 frames per second. This is all mechanical shutter, so they might have higher burst rates. In electronic, you get hideous rolling shutter. You be the judge. The EOS R, 8 frames per second. The X-T3, 11 frames per second. And you can get that rate without the booster grip, which you couldn't with the X-T2. They do have a new sport mode too, which is 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter with no blackout. That's like video, but it crops it down to 16 megapixels, but that would be 8K video? Is that what that is? Anyways, that's crazy. It's like the Sony A9, so pretty crazy specs. Connectivity, they all have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and their respective apps to control the camera, blah, 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 blah. Video specs is where one of these cameras just makes a giant leap and the other two just kind of maintain the status quo. The Nikons, they're both 4K, 30 frames per second, 10-bit external. So if you're recording to an external drive, you can do 10-bit, 100 megabits per second. I couldn't find that just on one website, so that might actually be wrong. Could be more than 100 megabytes per second. The EOS R, 4K, 30 frames per second, 8-bit, and it's a 1.7 times crop, which, Canon, would you just get your together when it comes to 4K video? I don't understand what you're doing, and nobody else does either, so figure it out, okay? 4K video, try to get that crop under 1.2 maybe? 1.7. That's a bigger crop than APS-C to full frame. The X-T3, now this is, and I'm gonna go into this a little bit more in detail because the X-T3 has 4K 60 frame per second 420 10-bit internal recording and 10-bit 422 external recording, 4K 60 simultaneously. That's bonkers out of a camera that small. A couple of generations ago, I had a Fuji, I still have a Fuji X-T10. That was my first camera. The video was, it was okay. It wasn't great. The video wasn't great. Now, my X-T20, the video's very good. It's not really good, but it's very good, very usable. You can use it for B-roll or even production. Like you really can use it. I'm shooting this on an X-T100 right now, so I mean, you be the judge of that. Some of the video I've seen of the X-T3 and its files, DP Review did a video comparing it to the GH5S, and it looks incredible, especially with Fujifilm's pre-done color grading or film simulations, whatever you want to call them, the Eterna profile. Just looks fantastic, and high ISO shooting, dynamic range, everything. It looks so good. Fujifilm 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody thought about them for video, and now people are talking about replacing their GH5s with an X-T3, which is nuts. 120 frames per second, 1080. They're all touch screens. The Nikon and the Canon, no, is it a flip out screen on the Nikon? It's definitely a flip out screen on the Canon. I can't remember if it is on the Nikon. I forgot to write it down. I'll put it here, yes or no. The X-T3, unfortunately, is just a tilt screen, a three-way tilt screen, so it does the weird little portrait orientation flip out as well, like the X-T2. I would love to have seen this X-T100 screen make its way to that camera. I have a feeling weather sealing's a problem with this design, so who knows. Now, here's the great part. Everybody's freaking out about card slots. That's the thing everybody's talking about. All photography, Twitter, and just the internet in general when it comes to photography, everybody's talking about the fact that the Nikon and the Canon each only have one card slot, and to make it even worse, the Nikon only accepts XQD cards, which are very expensive. Great cards, but if you're gonna have one expensive card, like, give us two card slots, you guys. The Nikon and the Canon are bigger cameras than the Fuji by a lot. And I'm gonna mention another camera here in a sec that's also, they're also bigger than, that has two card slots. The X-T3 has two card slots, two SD cards. You can always have that backup, which is incredibly important, especially if you're shooting weddings. Like, imagine being a wedding photographer and wanting to move to a mirrorless system and only having one card slot. I think that is absolute insanity. That being said, I've only ever owned cameras with one card slot. I've never had a card failure. Now that I've said that, I will have one for sure. That's just the way things work. But if I was doing this professionally, as opposed to a hobby, a paid hobby, money-making hobby, I would want that security of a second card slot. And I think it's a huge oversight on Nikon and Canon's part that neither of their cameras have dual card slots for cameras that are supposed to be professional level mirrorless cameras. I think that that's a big mistake. So I don't know, you be the judge. Is card slots, or is that important to you? It would be to me. Maybe it's not. I don't know, my dogs are barking. The Z6 is $2,000 US for the body only. The Z7 is $3,400 US for the body only. That's a big jump. The EOS R is $2,299 for body only. The X-T3 is $1,499 body only, and its specs absolutely smoke these other two cameras, except for the Z7 has significantly higher resolution, and they both the full frame ones obviously have higher expandable ISO ranges and higher native ISO ranges. I mean, $1,500 for that X-T3. But here is the elephant in the room: the Sony A7 III. So the Sony A7 III came out, I guess it's a month or two ago now. People just started getting deliveries of them within the last few weeks. I know I had a friend, Stu, who was waiting for his, and he got it just in time to take to his wedding in Maui. He's very excited. Stu and Holly, congratulations, by the way. I'm very happy for you guys, and I'll see you when you get back. It's a 24 megapixel full frame back illuminated sensor with sensor shift image stabilization. So not electronic, like it's an actual stabilized sensor. It's got 693 AF points, phase detect AF points, 93% coverage, 10 frames per second, 4K 30 frames per second, so it doesn't have the 60. I believe it's, is it 8-bit or 10-bit? I don't know, I'll put it down below here. Tilt screen, no flip around screen, and 2 card slots, and it is $2,000. The Nikon and the Canon, I can rip them right off this page and throw them in the garbage. The real competition here is between this X-T3 and the A7 III, and I will take either one of them over the Nikon and the Canon. I feel like Nikon and Canon have absolutely dropped the ball on these cameras. They had a chance to reclaim a market that they've lost to Sony in full frame sales in recent months. Sony has outpaced them in full frame sales. These two cameras are not going to rectify that situation for them, and it's unfathomable to me that they could have made the mistakes that they've made with these cameras, given their price points, the card slots, the video output. It's just not impressive at all. If you want some hands-on stuff with these videos, I'll link to some other channels below. Tony and Chelsea Northrup are going to have a hands-on with the X-T3. They've done the other two, Lok Chung, Kaiman Wang, who else? I'll link to Camera Store TV and DP Review. Oh my God, am I gonna get my hands on any of these cameras? Probably the X-T3 at some point. It won't be for a while. I'm not anywhere near the top of the food chain with testing that one out. The A7 III, I'm just gonna borrow Stu's when he gets back from Hawaii. Hi, Stu. And the Nikon and the Canon, I'm gonna search around locally and see if there's a camera store here that wants to hook me up with a little test session with those guys. And yeah, we'll go from there. But I honestly feel like Fujifilm and Sony really just clobber these other two cameras, and it's not even close. It's really not. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this new segment. I don't know what we're gonna call it, but I kind of want to make it like a monthly thing where we just go over like news and happening around the photography world. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that little bell if you want to keep up to date on when I post videos. Apparently this is how you hit that little bell. You gotta do this. I don't know what that means. That's it. See you soon.